All right, everybody. Today we're going to be ranking all Hunter x Hunter anime arcs. Okay. Keep in mind that I'm only going to be focusing on the 2011 anime adaptation. Okay. So just keep that in mind for anyone that's thinking about the OG, was it late 90s, early 2000s Hunter x Hunter arc? Regardless, whatever. Coming in at number 7, the election arc. Easily the most boring and villainous arc of all of Hunter x Hunter, in all of Hunter x Hunter. Okay, now granted, it's probably not meant to be something that's very action-packed or thought-provoking, but many of the events and characters that were involved in the arc were honestly pretty lackluster and disappointing. Okay, the Zodiacs were pretty annoying. Jean is really unlikable, and his introduction to the series is very anticlimactic, given the fact that he's been hyped since episode 1 of the series. Even the meeting between Gon and Jean are pretty lackluster, given all the attention that was surrounding the situation for the series up to this point. It was the main motivator for our protagonists and a secondary one for the other characters as well, like Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio. I do find Pearson kind of interesting as a character, given how he's presented as this two-faced fake nice guy who could end up becoming this real villain down the line. And that last statement is probably my real issue with this arc. It just seems like it was, well, rushed, to be honest with you. Maybe down the line, now that it's been revealed that Hunter x Hunter will be continuing the series, we'll get to see a lot of these characters more, and they'll get fleshed out a bit more. But as of now, this was easily the worst arc in the series, okay? And I don't want to act like I didn't enjoy this arc, because there were certain portions of the arc that I did enjoy. But in comparison to all the other arcs in this anime that were much better in comparison, this one doesn't hold a candle to it. Alright, coming in at number 6 is the Greed Island arc. This arc is a lot less compelling than I anticipated. This was a good arc in terms of excess training for Gon and Killua, and their training with Biscuit was certainly beneficial for their growth as Nen users. The dodgeball portion of this arc was great and thrilling from start to finish, and I wish more of the arc was similar to the level of intensity that was shown during the dodgeball portion, but unfortunately it wasn't. The whole usage of the card game aspect was pretty boring and uninteresting, and the fact that the game of the Greed Island didn't tie into the usage of utilizing and expanding what we know about Nen was pretty disappointing. I do know, you can't access the game without being able to use Nen, but outside of that, Nen isn't really utilized a lot in this arc. It's really just kind of like, hey, we're just gonna use this Yu-Gi-Oh! Fake Me Out version of a card game in an anime about hunters, which is okay, I guess, but it kind of takes away from the main premise of the story and what was really an interesting part of the entire foundation of this series, right? But anyway, I think this was an opportunity where Nen could have been expanded upon, and Greed Island could have been a great opportunity for the series to do that, especially since you can't even access the game, like I said beforehand, without being able to use Nen. But it's not really emphasized past that point, so it's kind of just left a little dull. It's, instead of seeing more about Nen, we're introduced to a card game that isn't nearly as interesting as Nen or its many applications. Okay, when watching this arc, it seemed that the card game, the aspects of the Greed Island arc, became a distraction towards the main plot. I know that at the end of the Greed Island arc, it led to Gon, being able to find a card that took him one step closer to finding Jean, right? I'm not saying it was a complete waste of time, but it seemed like this was more of a side mission as opposed to a continuation of the main story. You know what I mean? Almost like a little bit of a filler type of arc where it's hey, yeah, I'm gonna just do this to gain more experience, but it's not really affecting the mainline story that much, if that kind of makes sense. I don't want to say this I hate the card game though, but the focus on the card game aspect was a bit too much, and I feel like it just dragged on and on and on. Another issue that I had were the villains of this arc were pretty generic and uninteresting. I hated how the villains in this arc kept having this stupid redemption thing as well. Like, you remember the murderer, that guy that literally tried to kill Biscuit, Gon, Killua, and it's like at the end when he proved that he couldn't even, you know, fight them, he tried to do this like, redemption thing where it's like, I never tried to become a murderer. It was just my fucked up environment that made me want to murder people. Whatever the fuck he said, right? Whatever the hell, his explanations were. Honestly, it's just stupid. Okay, if he's a murderer, if he's a killer, just keep him as that. All right, and then just, I don't know, have him die or fall off a cliff or some shit, and just be done with him, right? And it's the same thing with Genthru and his gang of bombers. Like towards the end of the arc, when Gon and the whole gang finally beats him, right? They were doing this whole thing of like, we were just doing all this stuff to just get out of the game, we didn't really mean to hurt people, all this bullshit, and then Gon being the forgiving person that he is, at least, well, sometimes, right? He was like, oh well, whatever, that's okay, we forgive you. Like, no, like, bro, like, he was killing people because of a video game. Like, that's bullshit. No, there were other people that were trying to actually, achieve winning, like, the video game and, like, do so without killing other people. No, Genthru and his gang of bombers were literal murderers that did not give a fuck about anyone else that was not in their little clique, okay? Not only were they trying to win the game, they were trying to be the only people to win the game so they could keep all the prize money and all the awards to themselves. Okay, they're pieces of shit, and it's okay to say that they're pieces of shit. They're pieces of shit. It is what it is. But just keep it like that. You know what I mean? Stop this little fucking redemption bullshit. But other than that, I mean, the arc is decent, in totality. It's definitely better than the election arc, but the other arcs that come afterwards, they're so much better, and they have a lot less things that I had issues with. So number 6, I think, is the best place to keep Greed Island. Alright, coming at number 5, the Zodike family arc. This arc was probably the most average out of all the arcs. It wasn't as interesting as the previous 2 arcs, yet it wasn't nearly as interesting as the arcs that are going to be ranked afterwards. I think this arc could have been better if they focused more on like the history of the assassin family, why and how they ended up in such a deadly business, things like that. Some of the history of some of the crazy techniques that they can use, things like that. Another thing that makes this arc pretty average, and at times below average, are some of Killua's family members. Outside of Killua, his pops and his grandfather, the rest of the family are pretty forgettable and honestly very annoying and unlikable at times, okay? The butlers are probably more interesting, at least to me, than the rest of the family, which says a lot about just how low I think the rest of the family members, like, are. Now, it may seem like I hate this arc after all this, but I really don't. I enjoy a lot of the training that Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio had to do just to enter the estate. That crazy big dog, Mike, his introduction, that thing is sick. Just seeing the size of that dog and just hearing some of the stories about how anyone who like enters through like the wrong way just gets shredded and eaten alive. Like, that's sick, man. But honestly, kind of funny. Hearing how crazy people do things like that, just being all nosy and shit. And just hearing about how some of the lore of this family, how everyone knows where they are, but no one fucks with them. Like, they own this entire mountain. Their estate is on a fucking mountain. Like, that's just insane, Just little things like that, I just kind of appreciated about this arc. Again, I don't necessarily love a whole bunch of things about this arc, but I ranked it at number 5 mainly because I had less issues with it than the previous 2 arcs that I ranked lower than it. So, number 5. All right, starting in at number 4, the Hunter exam arc. Honestly, is an underrated arc overall that I don't think gets enough appreciation. I think this arc does a great job establishing the main characters, their tendencies, personalities, and goals, all while showcasing the uniqueness of the Hunter x Hunter world. I remember never hearing of Hunter x Hunter before, and I initially thought that Gon was like some fake me out Goku lookalike character. And I'm so happy about how wrong I was to make such a wrong assumption. I think the main goal for an introductory arc is to establish the main characters, showcase their main goals, motivations, and lay the foundation of the world that we'll be viewing. And I think this initial arc of Hunter x Hunter does an excellent job of that. Plus, the Hunter exam itself was very refreshing and unique regarding side characters, tasks that had to be done, and the interaction between a lot of these side characters and, that of the main characters. So, number 4. Number 3, we got the Heaven's Arena arc. This arc takes everything about the first arc and builds on it tremendously well. We're introduced into a complex and fascinating power system of Nen and how it uniquely plays into each character. One of the main things I enjoy about this arc is it doesn't give its main characters preferential treatment or plot-induced armor. Everything that Gon, Killua, Kurapika gain in this arc is something that they have to work hard for and earn. And every bad/stupid decision that they make, there is a subsequent consequence that goes along with those actions. For example, remember when Gon went out of his way to fight on this 200 floor despite not having that much experience with Nen and against the wishes of Ling, which leads to him getting seriously injured, almost killed, and then banned from practicing Nen for a whole month. And Wing gave him the ultimatum of, if you break this rule of not using Nen for a whole month, I'm not going to teach you anything. Okay, you already went against my wishes of, not fighting yet on this 200 floor. If you go against what I'm telling you again, I'm done. You can figure out Nen by yourself. And it's things like that where it may not seem that big of a deal, but it's stuff like that that's honestly, it's refreshing to see in stories, because a lot of the times we see characters, especially main characters, kind of get away with a lot of bullshit decisions, and it's like, oh, well, they're the main characters, we can't kill them, we can't seriously injure them, we can't really hurt them that much, we're just gonna kind of give them a cop out. And it's like, no, fuck that. Okay, treat them like a lot of the other characters in the series, where if they make a stupid decision, give them the subsequent stupid consequence. And I think this arc does a great job of doing that. And while we're on the topic of Gon and Killua training with Nen, I do appreciate how this arc doesn't speed through the development of the characters. You know what I mean? But we actually get to see the progression, of their Nen abilities over time, so that any feats that they achieve later actually seems earned and not really handed to them. You never really get this feel that Gon or Killua are like Gary Stu type characters. You get the essence that they're prodigies, but you also get the essence that these are people that have had to work tremendously hard to attain each and every single ability that they get. Yes, they have natural talent, but that natural talent has to be cultivated through hard work, and that hard work is shown in a very good way, I think, to where we actually see the fruits of their labor. It actually feels realistic, and it feels earned, and it doesn't feel like this guy's just a main character, that's the only reason why he can do this type of stuff. No, it feels like this is someone who is talented, but worked hard at his craft, and is able to enjoy the fruits of those labors. So overall, really enjoyed this arc. Number 3, Heaven's Arena. The only reason why it's not higher is because the 2 arcs ahead of it are just so fucking dope. Number 2. This may come as a little bit of a shock to people. It's the Chimera Ant arc. Now, people are going to be seeing this and going to be like, what the fuck? Chimera Ant arc is one of the best arcs in all of anime history. How the hell can you say it's not even the best arc in its anime and all this type of stuff? I get it, but let me explain. Let me at least start with the good, right? What else is there to be said about this arc that hasn't been said? The writing, the storylines, the fights, the dialogue between characters, the growth of certain characters, and the descent of others. This is an arc I really do recommend to any anime viewer. Great moments in this arc consist of Gon and Killua recklessness resulting in getting Kai killed, and them having to live with that consequence. Killua further maturing as a character and showing camaraderie and compassion to new characters like Withy Kalgo, right? Gon witnessing and experiencing loss for the first time drives him over the edge to where he risks his entire future to avenge Kite, almost dying in the process. Everything that happens with Meruem's story arc, the entire rise and fall of the Chimera Ants in general, I mean, there's plenty to enjoy about this arc. But after rewatching this arc, to gain, more of an objective outlook, I realized a few issues with it. Right? First of all, it's really bloated. Like, really, really bloated. This arc is 61 episodes long, lasting 3 times as long as the Greed Island arc. The focus on many, other side characters was way too heavy in this arc, and honestly should have been, cut a little bit closer to just focusing on the main characters. Now, I know what some people are probably thinking right now. No, it's not that interesting if you only focus on the main characters, whatever. It's nice to see other side characters. I agree. But at the same time, it's only to a certain extent, okay? I don't care that much about the side characters to where they start having just as much, if not more, screen time than the main characters. Alright, let's keep it a little bit centered over here. Right? I want to know more about the side characters, but not that much more. They're side characters for a reason. Right? Like, I enjoyed seeing some of the things with the other side characters and, the worldwide problems of the Chimera Ants, and especially in the NGL. But, after that establishment, we don't really need to see more with the side characters. I don't need to really see, every single little detail of every fight that they're in and every issue that they're going through and, their backstory and history and all this. That's a bit too much, okay? Like I said, they're side characters for a reason. Introduce them, let them do their thing a little bit, show them from time to time, but keep it mainline, okay? Another thing that I didn't like about this arc was the lack of deaths and the brutal fighting scenes in this arc. Now, there are fights, and there are great fights in this arc, and I appreciate it. But with how emphasized of a serious and dire situation this is, you would think there would be, a little bit more deaths and a lot more casualties in such a chaotic situation. But outside of a few people, a few side characters, no one else really dies. It's teased like a few people may die, but no one actually does. And especially the main characters and those that are surrounding the main characters, nothing happens to them. It's just, it takes a lot of the, I don't know, the stakes away, if that makes sense, when it's almost like a war zone basically. But when you look at a war zone, you expect a lot of people to die, maybe even some of the main characters, right? But when you're watching basically like a war zone type of scenario, and coincidentally all the important characters just somehow live through it, it makes it a little disappointing, to be honest. Because not disappointing that, I didn't want to see them anymore or something like that. I just wanted them to die. But it takes away from the level of realism that was actually injected into this arc. In the introduction of it, you got this sense of wow, this is some serious shit, But then as time kind of goes on, you're like, how serious is it? You know what I mean? It's not great. Like, it's already established that these chimera ants are a complete threat to mankind, as we see with the chimera ants literally going to different villages, murdering people in various ways. I think the arc does well in establishing this brutality towards the beginning of the arc, but goes away from it, especially towards the end. It seems pretty unlikely that every member of the Hunter Castle invasion team, were all able to make it out alive without any serious casualties, right? Meriwem, Yuppie, Pito, Poof were all hyped as characters that were going to be extremely deadly. And the fact that Kite and Netero were the only main characters to die amongst the team is pretty disappointing. I mean, like, obviously you're not going to kill off Gon and Killua, though what they did with Gon was, pretty shocking. I like what they did with Gon. But, guys like Knuckle, Shoot, Moral, Nove, characters who, if we never saw them for the remainder of the series, I doubt many people would even notice it or even care. Like, what reason did all of them have to survive? Like, seeing Knuckle run around and yell the Royal Guards, yell at the Royal Guards and barely escape with his life constantly, like time and time again, started to take the tension out of the air and consequently made the arc less serious than it probably was intended to be. Rather, it made things seem like a bit silly, almost like Killua and Knuckle were playing this stupid game of tag with Yuppie. Anyways, I don't want to keep ranting about this before I sound like, I didn't really enjoy this arc, but these were the flaws that just decreased the quality of the arc. So, because of that, number 2. And if you could guess it, number 1, the York New City arc. This may surprise many of you, as almost consensus, like I said before, that the Chimera Ants arc is so far the best arc in, all the Hunter x Hunter series. Like, most people would agree on that, but I don't think so. Now, for the longest, I did think, like many people did, the Chimera Ants arc was the best arc. But after rewatching the series for the second time, it allowed me to really contextualize and go over a lot of the details presented in the arc versus the York New arc. And I gotta say, the York New arc stood out as the overall best one. Alright, so first of all, this is obviously subjective. What arc I think is better, versus what arc you all think is better. It all depends on the person. But personally, I really enjoy anime that's, darker and carries a more serious tone. With a greater focus on the quality of writing, storytelling, communication, especially communicating with, meaningful subtext within the story. And I think there's not an arc that does it better than the York New City arc. The introduction of the spiders really do live up to the billing, as they are just as wicked and destructive as we all thought them to be. Seeing the internal battle Kurapika deals with is an amazing, visual, as he battles with having pure disgust of murdering people versus knowing this is the sacrifice he must make in order to avenge his clan. The battles that we see over the course of the arc, takes a toll on Kurapika as he is slowly consumed by his obsession for vengeance for his clan. And this very obsession slowly starts to eat away at his soul, chipping away at the one kind-hearted young man we all knew him to be. The nuances of the Phantom Troop is really personified here, as they're not just simply, some evil organization set out to rule the world like any generic evil group. Rather, they're comrades who care for one another and function as a unit with the goal of stealing valuable items for riches. Their personalities are, distinct from each other, and watching their interactions are both interesting and unique as they respond with different behaviors to scenarios that are introduced throughout the plot of the arc. The tension in this arc is consistent, and it's utterly brutal in showcasing the moments like murdering of the Mafia gang members, as well as Kurapika killing Ubogi. All in all, this was the best arc in my opinion. But let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, but I'll see you on the next video.